Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Tuesday. A lot to dive into today. Lots of news in the sports world, and also some other things I want to touch on pop culture wise. But I want to start the show by saying a very happy birthday, or as I like to say, birthday, to my great friend, the guy that appears every Tuesday here on To The Point. He won't be on today. He'll be on tomorrow because we're going to give him the day off. But happy birthday to my brother from another mother, Seamus Fillmore. We've been doing this for a year and a half, once a week. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It's exciting. I love that he agreed to do it. He's been really one of my closest friend since we were 2 or 3 years old, and we're still tight to this day. But yeah, no, Shay, happy birthday, buddy. I think a lot of people could say this, Seamus, if you're a friend with him, he makes your life better. He's a really good person, better person than me. Which is nice when you have friends that are better people than you, so that you can be intermingled in that little group. But Seamus, happy birthday! Quarter century. You're getting old. Doesn't look it though. Still look good, but you're getting old. But happy birthday, buddy! I love you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. But he'll be back on the show tomorrow. But I just want to start off the show with that. I also saw, just hopping on before the podcast, we're going to get to sports today, but this one came out of nowhere. Gilbert Gottfried died today. And I don't know if people know who Gilbert Gottfried is. He's he was a great comedian. He was on the movie called Problem Child that I really enjoyed growing up. You probably think back to the redheaded kid and to the father that was on 8 Simple Rules that tragically passed away on set. His name is, I'm forgetting his name right now. But Gilbert was the principal in that movie. He's got a voice that you'll know if you hear it. He's got some great stand-up specials. And I didn't know he was battling an illness. And that 67 years old, gone way, way too young. And I know he was actually touring. So I think obviously people knew he was sick, but I didn't know that he was that sick. But I just thought I'd bring that up because Gilbert Gottfried is a guy that I've followed forever. I think he's one of the most, it says in Variety magazine, one of the most iconic voices in comedy. Couldn't agree more. I guess after a long illness, so he might have had cancer or something. Rest in peace to Gilbert Gottfried, because I did not see that. I just noticed it right before I hopped on Twitter about a minute before we went live here. So some good news and some bad news with obviously Seamus's birthday and then Gilbert Gottfried passing away. But that one came out of nowhere for me. A lot to get into today. We're going to go through, I'm going to talk about the Lakers today. They're fascinating. They do annoy me, but I want to go through a deep dive of who deserves the blame here. Frank Vogel got fired. Who should replace him as head coach? Things of that nature. Talk about some rookies in the NHL getting their first games tonight in Buffalo, in Columbus, and then also in Seattle. Touch on that. And some baseball stories, including the Cincinnati Reds president saying one of the most baffling things that I've heard from a president of an organization in a long, long time. But it was ballsy. Was it smart? No, but I appreciate it, and we're going to point it out today, and I'm going to talk about it. Let's start NBA. NBA tonight, you got the play-in games, which I'll touch on in a minute, but let's start with the train wreck that was the Los Angeles Lakers. A better question, the best question you could say about basketball is it harder to miss the playoffs or is it harder to finish above 500? And it was definitely harder to finish above 500, knowing that both play-in teams were below 500, which the NBA continues to do. But also, you look around and somehow the New Orleans Pelicans, sans Zion Williamson, the Los Angeles Clippers, sans Kawhi Leonard, sans Paul George for 95% of the year, no Norman Powell for the last couple months, make the playoffs, and the Los Angeles Lakers, who had LeBron, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook for 78 games, did not. Even with the new play-in. This isn't the old days where you had to be one of the top 8 seeds. You get in if you're pathetic enough to be 10th in your conference, which the Spurs did, the Lakers did not. So, of course, and this isn't all LeBron's fault, but every time LeBron has a poor season, it doesn't go as well, it's always the coach's fault. Always. And it happens to be Frank Vogel. It was David Blatt. It's always a different. The only one he really didn't push out the door was Tyronn Lue, because he left Tyronn Lue in Cleveland with the cupboards bare. But so Frank Vogel, a champion, a really good coach, was fired yesterday. As I look at the Lakers season, Frank Vogel deserves about 5 to 10% of the blame for this season. Could I criticize Frank Vogel? Yes. I said from day one, Russell Westbrook should have came off the bench. He shouldn't have been a starter. He's erratic. He plays stupid basketball, and he is the farthest thing from a point guard. He's a solo guard. It's me all the time. LeBron was the point guard of the team. They wanted to have somebody come in so LeBron could play off ball, but team, LeBron, whoever thought, okay, you know who was going to take care of the ball when I don't have it? One of the most erratic point guards in the history of the National Basketball Association. So he should have put him off the bench. He should have benched him more, but maybe he didn't have the authority, because we see that this Lakers organization, they pull the strings. I don't think he gets to make all that many choices about the team or have a big say in what happens. So we'll see about that. LeBron's in year 19, whatever it is, 19. He's 37 years old, but it's still LeBron James. I think he has more say in personnel decisions than any other athlete in sports. I think he gets to pick a lot of the players that he adds. And I believe that LeBron James wanted Russell Westbrook. He wanted Russell Westbrook more than Buddy Hield, who would have been a better fit. He wanted him more than DeMar DeRozan, who would have been a better fit. And, hey, you make the bed, you got to lie in it. And it didn't work. And the lazy argument that some people make, Lakers fans, is that, AD and LeBron and Westbrook, they never played together. They played 21 games together out of 82. Okay. They were 11-10. So if you put that over 82, there'd be a play-in team. They had the second best odds to win the championship. You'd be a play-in team. You're not beating Phoenix. You're not beating Memphis. Beat it. But that's the argument. LeBron deserves 30% of the blame, at least, because I believe he had a say in personnel decisions. He decided that he was just going to score every night, didn't want to assist the basketball, wanted to make it a one-man show. I put that blame on him too. Because did he score a lot of points? Yeah, but what did that give? What did that get him? Nothing. Also, he didn't win the scoring title. Joel Embiid did. So ultimately, it didn't work out that well for LeBron James Jr. Also, so that's 40% of the blame. Vogel, those guys. 20% go to Westbrook and Davis. And the rest of the team, I'll say the rest of the players get 20%. Because other than LeBron, the most consistent Lakers player this year was Malik Monk. And no, that's not like a Shaolin Temple monk. That's a human being, Malik Monk. He's a guard, not a superstar by any means. He was their second best player because Anthony Davis was what Charles Barkley said he was most of the year: street clothes. Russell Westbrook was turning the ball over, airballing shots, and having the worst three-point percentage of any high-volume shooter in the NBA. Austin Reeves was another player they relied on, undrafted white kid, free agent. And again, in NBA, there are good white players, but there are better black ones. It's just a fact. Jokic is a rarity out there. So 20%. So that's LeBron 30, 20 to the rest of the team, and 10% to Frank Vogel. The other 40% goes to the management, ownership, the clown show that is the Los Angeles Lakers. Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, the Rambis family, Phil Jackson if he's involved. I don't know who's talking to these people, but it's a clown show. What are you doing? You fired a coach 3 times this year, but it took you 4 times to do it because it took you after the season, and one of you leaked it to Woj. Like, at least have the decency, have the balls to at least fire a coach in person. Don't do it through the media. Don't leak that you're looking for a new coach before he's fired. I think that's really unprofessional as well. But there's no stability on this team. There's no stability in the front office. I wouldn't trust anybody to make a personnel decision. How Rob Pelinka was not fired, but Frank Vogel will make no sense to me. It never will. And I see Walker's in the comments, big Lakers fan. I feel for Vogel, hard to coach a team that can't play a lick of defense or have any consistent shooters outside of LeBron, who should be a facility. I agree. LeBron shouldn't be jacking up threes, although I think we'll see him continue to do that more and more throughout his career because I don't think he wants to drive to the lane anymore. I get it. He's got some old limbs. He's injured a lot more. Doesn't want to put that stress on his body. That's a lot to ask. That's also a fault of the team, that your best player is 37. It's very different for Tom Brady in football because you can't hit the quarterback anymore. You hit a quarterback, there's a flag. The only guys that really get crushed in football are the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens, the quarterbacks that are on the move. When you're in open space, guess what? You're like a receiver. You can take a lick. Brady will fall, he'll avoid it, and he has a great offensive line. It's completely different. NBA, it's more about your knees, things of that nature, and LeBron's got some ankle problems. So I just look at this team, and I don't see a scenario where they are elite next season. LeBron will still be there, okay? But I look at it, and I think my big conclusion is you trade Anthony Davis so that you can get out of the Russell Westbrook problem. I don't know who's going to take Russell Westbrook. There's rumors the Indiana Pacers would take his contract. I don't buy that. Indiana is not a clown show organization. Yes, they were terrible this year, but they were competitive in a small market for close to a decade. They're always competitive. They had Reggie Miller in the 90s and early 2000s with Mark Jackson and a very stable team. They had Paul George for a long time with Lance Stevenson, and they had a team that was at least competitive. I'm not saying they were elite, but they were competitive. And Rick Carlisle is their coach, a champion coach with the Dallas Mavericks. He and Russell Westbrook will go together like peanut butter and tuna fish. It's not going to be good. It's going to be disgusting. It's not going to gel. It's like me and tuna fish. It's like me and fish. I wouldn't eat fish if my life depended on it. So Indiana's not, I don't know who will. Is the Lakers' best situation? We'll take John Wall. I'd rather have John Wall. He hasn't played basketball in like 2 years. I'll take my chances. At least I know he's healthy. unless he's got Ben Simmons syndrome where he hurts his back, I don't know, driving to the local Y, or maybe he's got the Lonzo Ball shooting motion where he's trying to grab something off the top shelf and he pulls a disc. Is that what happened? Unless that happened to John Wall, I'd rather have John Wall, because I think he'll buy into a team system. Russell Westbrook is a clown show. Creighton, Chinese food and chocolate pudding. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good one. But I mean, if you had your Chinese food first and then you had chocolate pudding for dessert, would that be different? Because to quote Ted, if you don't eat your meat, then you don't get your pudding. So can you eat Chinese food and then have pudding for dessert? Is that okay? I'm not a big pudding guy, unless it's like pudding cups, homemade pudding. Seems like a whole lot of effort for not much gain. I mean, I prefer it over like a Jell-O. I'll share a Jell-O story someday on the pod that really scarred by Jell-O for the rest of my life. But another time we'll talk about Jell-O. But if you got your favorite desserts, leave it in the comments. We'll talk about, it's Tuesday. It's April 12th. We'll talk about desserts. I don't care. Talk about anything. Anything you want me to talk about, leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it today. But Lakers, next coach. Rumors right after Vogel's fired. Nick Nurse. Wow, that's rich. So Nick Nurse, head coach of the Toronto Raptors, is under contract for 2 more years after this one. Team's entering the playoffs, and the Raptors would have to approve Nick Nurse talking to the Lakers. Now, I don't think it's crazy, but at the same time, I think Nick Nurse is better suited coaching a team that is sans LeBron. Because LeBron has a big ego. He needs to be in control. I think he likes to be the pseudo head coach. He could handle Kawhi Leonard, because Kawhi Leonard didn't say anything. He was a team guy. He had Pop for close to a decade. Once you have Pop, Nick Nurse seems like a cupcake. Another dessert reference. He's lemon meringue pie. Whatever the. No, that's a little too vibrant. That's a little too. It's a little too much for Kawhi Leonard. He's more like he's like Jell-O. He's pretty boring. But Nick Nurse is not going to the Lakers unless they throw a bucket load of money at him, which they might. But the Raptors could match that money. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, who own the Raptors, Leafs, TFC, they make more money than the Buss family. Larry Tannenbaum is trying to buy Chelsea in the Premier League. Soccer, or football, as they say it, across the pond. So they're making money, Maple Leaf Sports. The Buss's top revenue is basketball. Most people that own sports leagues, their team is not their primary source of income. It's not where they make the most money. It's not for Jerry Jones. It's not for MLSE. For these big guys, it's not. So I heard Mark Jackson reference. I think Mark Jackson should have been a coach a long time ago. Was the coach in Golden State really set up the foundation of success? They fired him. Steve Kerr came in. They went on a run where they've been a dynastic type team. So I think Mark Jackson deserves another chance. He's been working for the mothership for must be close to a decade now. Calls games with Van Gundy and Mike Breen. But he would be good. I think he'd be a good fit. I heard Juwan Howard. He's currentently coaching Michigan. He's at his alma mater. I think that's a good job. I think it would take a lot for him to leave. It's kind of like the Jim Harbaugh situation, whereas you're going to have a coach that's in college leave for the NBA. I think it's hard to leave your alma mater. I think he's got a pretty good gig down there in Michigan. I think they like him a lot. He just had a good tournament. Went to the Sweet 16 in the tournament. So we'll see there. But I just don't see a Nick Nurse going Mark Jackson would be a good hire. He'd be a smart hire. But I do think it's important that they have a guy that is going to be like, okay, when I walk in here, we're coaching my way. I'm not taking pointers from Kurt Rambis. Okay, Phil Jackson, yeah, you were a great coach. You're old now. Your back sucks, and you used to date Jeannie Buss. That's the only reason you're here. So I don't care what you're saying to me. We're coaching the team. I'm making the rotations. That's it. When it comes to coaching, I have both hands on the wheel. You have none. That's a Brian Burke quote from his book. In management, you have to, in coaching, whatever you're doing, and I think you have to have both hands on the wheel. You make those decisions, not somebody else making them for you, because then it's you can't say it was your fault. You at least want to go into a job, you approach the day, you want to say, well, at least I made this decision. I went all in, and if I fail, you know what? That's on me, because at least I did it my way, the way I wanted to approach it. So I think for whoever the coach is, it's going to hopefully the Lakers, Jeannie Buss has enough sense to say, I need to hire a coach that's going to be a coach, a leader of men, not just somebody that's going to do what we say, because what we've been saying has been wrong for a long time. The Lakers have missed the playoffs in 7 of the last 9 seasons. From 1965 to 2011, they missed the playoffs 5 times. 5. That's how bad it's gone for the Los Angeles Lakers. So they need to try to figure it out. I mean, you have LeBron, so it's a good starting point. You're not like your Sacramento, who fire another coach yesterday, Alvin Gentry. Like, I mean, that's their record of, I think it's a lot. I'm going to look that up. The last time they make the playoffs, I'll get it wrong because it's more than what I'll guess. I think it's 17 years, but like I said, I think it's more than that they haven't made the playoffs, and making the play-in does not count. You have to actually make the playoffs, which, of course, they wouldn't make the play-in. But the Kings are missing the playoffs. They are looking for a new coach. And at least, who do they have? They used to have Tyrese Halliburton. Oh, wait, they traded him to Indiana. So they have Domantas Sabonis, who I like, but that's all they can sell. Small market, poor ownership. At least the Lakers have LeBron James, one of the best players in NBA history. So with their loss to the Warriors last night, the Kings were eliminated from playoff contention for the 16 straight years. The Sacramento Kings have not made the playoffs. And I'm going to reiterate, it's really hard to not make the playoffs in the NBA. It's going to be interesting what the Lakers do. But they need to look in the mirror and say, what we've been doing does not work. We need to allow our coach to coach. And how about we don't consult LeBron on moves? Maybe. Just because he's a superstar doesn't mean you're good at picking players for your team. Michael Jordan stunk at it. Jerry Krause, for all his warts, picked the right guys to come in. He wanted Rodman. LeBron wanted guys that played at North Carolina. He wanted Tar Heels. And Jerry Krause said, no, I'm bringing in guys that I think can help you win. Steve Kerr was brought in. Goes across the pond to get Tony Kukoc. He found guys that he knew would help them win. Players aren't always the best at doing this. Tom Brady can usually identify guys that will help him win. I haven't seen that same result in basketball from LeBron. And Miami's completely different because it was a super team. Russell Westbrook was never going to be a super team. He hasn't won anything. Dwayne Wade was a champion prior to him joining. So I just think they need a complete reset. And until something happens, that'll be the last time I talk about the Lakers for some time. Playing games tonight. You got Cavs at Brooklyn, Clippers, T-Wolves. Seamus, obviously, he's not on the show today. It's his birthday, as I mentioned off the top, and he'll be back tomorrow. But he wanted to send me his picks, so I'm going to read them out on air because we might start a little more gambling on the show. I mean, I did a bit this weekend, worked out for me. I don't love gambling, but I mean, it's the kids are gambling, the young people, my listeners out there, youngsters. Creighton, youngin. You young people keep me young, so I want to keep hip with the times here and do that stuff. So Seamus, so also since I'm not on today, this is his text. I still wanted to throw you my picks for tonight's plans. He's got the Nets only winning by 5, so that would mean the Cavs will cover the number. So Nets move on. That's the big decision. They win. When it comes to gambling, Cavs will cover the number tonight. So he's got Cavs +5. And then he has the Clippers defeating the Minnesota Timberwolves by 15 tonight on the road. So the Clippers being in the 8th spot, heading to Minnesota tonight, they will win this game. They will be the 7th seed. They will play the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round, but he has the Clippers by a sizable margin, 15 points tonight. Looking at Seamus's predictions, I have the Nets. I have the Nets by I believe it's 5.5 is normally the betting line for NBA. But if you're listening, you got the line. Let me know because that's interesting. I got the Nets by more than 5. That's for sure. I think the Nets are going to cruise to a victory tonight. Wouldn't surprise me to see the Brooklyn Nets win by 10 plus, maybe 15, because the Cavs they've got injuries. I don't believe Jared Allen is going to play. Evan Mobley will play, but he's banged up. And I don't see enough from Cleveland to keep this close. I love Darius Garland. He's been a great player all year out of Vanderbilt, but Kyrie's playing, Kevin Durant's playing, no Jared Allen, so that means Drummond will likely be playing against Mobley or Markkanen one-on-one, and I think that's a problem in the paint. So I think Brooklyn will out-rebound Cleveland. They got better three-point shooters. I like the Nets winning a comfortable game tonight against the Cavaliers. Clippers, Timberwolves. Like Seamus, I am on the upset tonight. I have the Los Angeles Clippers beating the Timberwolves. I like the Clippers have been a really good postseason team the last number of years. Yes, Kawhi Leonard is not playing, but Kawhi Leonard did not play in the second round last year. He didn't play in some of the series against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks last year. I believe that the Clippers with Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris Sr., they're going to create problems. Anthony Edwards has been banged up. I love Karl Anthony Towns, but they're a young team, little playoff experience. And I just think Norman Powell is a champion in this league. You got Paul George, who had a great playoff run last year. I believe the Clippers on the road find a way to win. They won 6 games last year on the road in the postseason. 3 against Dallas, which is crazy, but six games on the road last year they won. So I like the Clippers tonight, not by 15. Like Seamus, that's a big score, but I like the Clippers to win. If it's 5.5 the number, I think it'll be under 5.5. I think it'll be a very close game, but I think the Clippers will win tonight. They'll be the 7th seed. They'll play the Memphis Grizzlies, which I think Memphis would prefer the Timberwolves. Timberwolves have no playoff experience like Memphis, and they're very young. They don't know what they're doing. But the Clippers obviously don't have Kawhi Leonard. They're not what they used to be. But the fact that they made the playoffs and the Lakers didn't just tells you all you need to know. I think the Clippers are a strong mental team, and we'll see what happens tonight. But I just look at the Clippers. They got a whole lot of depth. Kennard, Reggie Jackson, Norman Powell, Zubac, They just can throw a lot of bodies at you. And so I got Clippers and I got the Nets, but I get different numbers from Seamus. I get the net. I take the Nets minus 5.5, lay the points, and I would take the Clippers. I think they're you'd be taking the underdog because the Timberwolves are the favorite tonight. I'm gonna look that up quickly for you guys because yeah, this is gonna be a segment going forward. Some betting lines, betting odds. Because like I said, this is where the world's going. I do bet from time to time when I see something I really like, I'll throw a couple bucks on it. But also, it's something I'm thinking about doing for the podcast. If there's interest, let me know because we'll do it for sure. But the NFL draft is in 16 days. I'm thinking of maybe doing some predictions with the show. If anybody wants to, we can start like a gambling pool or something with the draft where you can make predictions on picks, different things like that. So that's something I'm thinking about doing for the NFL draft because it's fun. I love that night. It's in 16 days, like I said. So let me know if you're interested. But tonight, the Brooklyn's a 9-point favorite. I got Brooklyn minus 9. Clippers are Timberwolves are a 3-point favorite. Clippers plus 3, take it all day. So that is where I'm leaning tonight. But yeah, those are my picks tonight. So I think we'll see Brooklyn and the Clippers walk away with wins. But we'll see. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We have the other playing games tomorrow night. NBA playoffs start this weekend. I mentioned yesterday that I thought I'd had Jokic winning the MVP of the league, although I believe Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player. Rookie of the year, I believe should be won by Scotty Barnes of the Toronto Raptors. Yes, he didn't have as much called upon him as, say, Cade Cunningham in Detroit, who was on a terrible team. But I do think he really helped turn that team around. He's a huge part of it. He's already a fantastic player. He's guarded LeBron. He guards key players. He's good defensively. His stroke has improved. I think he's a really crafty player. So I got Scotty Barnes winning Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, I have Marcus Smart of the Boston Celtics. I think he's super crafty. He's a physical defender. He gets in people's faces. He's tough to deal with. He's annoying. So Marcus Smart, would win my Defensive Player of the Year. Six man, probably Jordan Clarkson. He's an easy guy. He's a walking bucket. He comes off the bench in Utah. So Jordan Clarkson's an easy guy to go to. He's always making an impact on that team. And I'm sure there's awards I'm missing, but I'll touch on them later on if I can remember. But those are kind of the big ones that I have. Scotty Barnes, Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart. I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets winning the Most Valuable Player. We'll talk more NBA as we go through the week, as we get closer to the trade deadline. To the playoffs. Big news last night in the National Hockey League. As you know, I'm sitting waiting for baseball to start after the show, and I'm just kind of taking it all in. Then I get some breaking news that Drew Doughty, who has been injured for some time, rumored that he'd be back in time for the playoffs for the Los Angeles Kings, is done for the season after having wrist surgery yesterday. So this was big news because the Los Angeles Kings have been a team that's battled all year under Todd McClellan, has been a team that has been always in the playoff picture, battling in the Pacific Division with the Edmonton Oilers. But now with the Drew Doughty injury, they've called up guys like Jordan Spence. They've had Sean Dursey playing, Mikey Anderson, who I like a lot, who also got injured. So a young team who've had great years from Adrian Kempe and Kopitar and their cast of characters is now left wounded, and they didn't have a whole lot of depth to begin with. But they currently sit with 86 points, which is third in the Pacific, but they are only 2 points up on Vegas, and Vegas has a game in hand. So Los Angeles has 8 games remaining on the season. Vegas has 9. And Vegas is starting to get healthy. It seemed forever that they had to pass Dallas to get to the playoffs. But now it's looking more and more like they could catch the Los Angeles Kings and potentially play the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I believe this has huge impact on the entire NHL. This one injury, because maybe they would have caught LA anyway. But I think LA would have been a tougher matchup for Edmonton if they finished third, if they had Drew Doughty, obviously. He's a playoff performer. He's a Norris Trophy winner. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He's been there, done that. But if LA falls out of it, if they squeak into a wild card, if they're in a different situation, and it's Vegas versus Edmonton, this is not something the Edmonton Oilers should want. This is not best case scenario because I believe it was a guaranteed Edmonton plays LA. They are going to the second round. You can sell that it was a positive season. You can sell that you made strides. You got swept in the first round last year. I believe Edmonton would have won that series. But with Vegas, Mark Stone is a game time decision tonight. He might return. Robin Lehner is getting healthier. Guys are coming back, and as of right now, there is no salary cap in the postseason. So everyone will be eligible to return. You can have Riley Smith. You can have Dadonov. You can have Mark Stone, Lehner. You name it, can play. Shea Theodore can play for the Vegas Golden Knights. So they could be at full strength. Maybe they don't play that many games together, but they're all back healthy. And you're looking at an Edmonton team who's had no playoff success, coming off a sweep of Winnipeg, a crazy year where you don't have stable goaltending, your defense has been up in the air, but you found a way to overcome it. And sitting in front of you is one of the most successful playoff teams over the last number of years. A team in the past 4 years has made a conference final and a Stanley Cup final. Not bad. Many would say that they should have beat Montreal last year. They were a better team, but they also made a Stanley Cup final against the Washington Capitals. So does that guarantee that the Vegas Golden Knights would beat the Edmonton Oilers? No. But what I do think is that it's a tougher matchup. LA is very skilled. Do they have grinders on their team? Yes. They have guys like Dustin Brown that play that sort of style. Vegas is a grinding type team. They will grind you down. That's how they beat the Colorado Avalanche. It wasn't because they tried to outskill them. It's because they eliminated time and space. They frustrated the star players of Colorado, and eventually it got to them. So could they do the same thing to the Edmonton Oilers, where Connor McDavid runs out of ice, Leon Draisaitl runs out of ice, and the hooking/tripping calls that we see so frequently in the regular season, and the whistle goes away, favoring a more heavy, a more sturdy team in the Vegas Golden Knights. Not to mention, Robin Lehner has his warts. People might not like him because they chose him over the Flower, which I think is a stupid reason not to like a goalie. You can like him, not like him for his play, but for that, anyway, won't get into that today. But you look at it and say, Robin Lehner is a better playoff performing goalie than Mike Smith or Mikko Koskinen. That's not a debate. That's not conjecture. What we've seen so far in their career, Robin Lehner's better. So I think this is such a big injury because it has lingering effects on potentially 3 to 5 teams. Because if Vegas becomes third spot, well, LA could be a wild card team. If Vegas wins tonight, LA loses, Vegas will be in that third spot. Dallas and Nashville are now in a fight with LA and not Vegas. Dallas and Nashville currently have 10 games left. LA only has 8. So they have that leg up on that team. But you're all of a sudden like, well, we're not competing with Vegas anymore. We're competing with Los Angeles because they're going to be the third spot. But I was looking for intrigue. I was looking for a race, something that was compelling. And I might have found it. Now, am I compelled by the Rangers-Hurricanes game tonight? Of course. Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. But also, I look at this and say, how does this affect these two teams? How does this affect Edmonton's psyche? It shouldn't. You should gear up for both teams, but I do think Vegas would be a much tougher matchup. You're not going to get Nashville or Dallas because they're in the wild card spots. They're playing Calgary and Colorado. Unless Edmonton can catch Calgary, which I doubt, Calgary have to go in a downward spiral down the stretch here. But we'll see. As we look tonight, Vegas visits Vancouver. It's a must-win for Vancouver. It's also a must-win for Vegas. Every game down the stretch is must-win. Kings are in Chicago. You'd look at it and say, well, LA should win. LA is not out of it by any means. They could still finish third in the Pacific. But after all that Vegas has been through, and I talked about their trade deadline and how they're out of it, and what I think this proves more than anything in a grand scheme of things is that games in hand are bullshit. When you're on a team that is in a playoff race that is just hanging on for dear life, games in hand are futile. They are inconsequential if you don't win them. You have to win your games in hand in order for them to mean something. For the longest time, I had to clarify comments with standings, things of that nature. Well, Dallas has this many games in hand. Well, as we sit, the Dallas Stars have played 72 games. They have 86 points. Dallas has played 73 games. They have 84. So after all those games in hand, they still have one. But after all of that, they only have a 2-point buffer on the Vegas Golden Knights for the last wildcard spot. So after all of that, well, we got games in hand and we're in pretty good shape. It meant nothing because now they're still in the same dogfight that they were in 2 weeks ago. Except we're getting to the last 3 weeks and you're in the exact same spot, except you're in a worse position because you're closer in the standings. Vegas has Vancouver tonight. That's not an easy matchup because Vancouver is not technically out of the playoff race, but Winnipeg and Vancouver are hanging by a thread. Winnipeg gets 2 wins in 2 nights. They beat Montreal. They beat Ottawa. Good time of the year to get an Eastern Canadian road trip playing those type of teams. But as we currently stand in the wild card race in the West, Winnipeg has played 74 games, 8 remaining. They have 81 points. They are 5 points back of the Dallas Stars. They need a lot to go right for them to make the postseason. Vancouver has played 80 games. So they played 73 games, 80 points. So there's 6 points out of a playoff spot. So they need to basically run the table down the stretch and hope for a lot of luck. But oddly enough, the Vancouver Canucks, who have a hatred for the Edmonton Oilers, could do them a favor tonight, in my opinion, by potentially you see Vancouver win, keeps Vegas from getting points. LA goes into Chicago, gets a big win. Maybe they can hold on to their lead in the third spot in the Pacific down the stretch. But again, it's interesting. It would be a big deal if the Los Angeles Kings could hold on and make the playoffs because I think they're a team that's overachieved this season. They've had great years from Alex Iafallo, Adrian Kempe. You're seeing Jordan Spence get a call-up after having a great year with Ontario in the American Hockey League. Todd McClellan's a veteran behind the bench, but this was a team that probably needed another year. Get Mikey Anderson some experience. Play him with Doughty. Dursey, play a full season. Get some experience. But if this young team could get into the playoffs, Byfield, play a lot of American Hockey League, get some NHL games this season, that's a plus. But I would view this as one of the best stories of a team that had no expectations making the playoffs. And to me, the coach of the year should always go to the team with the best record. To me, it's very simple on who wins coach of the year. I love John Tortorella, but the year he won it, I don't think he should have. Because his team made it. They were the last team in the Eastern Conference to book their spot. If you have the best record, that means you are the best coach. You might have had the best team, but you had to keep them focused. You kept on the ice, you won games. Colorado has 110 points. That's most in the NHL. Florida's second with 108. So they're right there with Colorado. Now, if Florida finishes first in points, has the best point percentage in the National Hockey League, then Andrew Brunette should win Coach of the Year. And wouldn't that be a great story? Because Andrew Brunette had to take over for Joel Quenneville after that awkward situation early in the year with the whole Chicago Kyle Beach situation. That would be great. That's a great story. But so it's easy to me, but normally they'll pick a guy where the team didn't make the playoffs the year before, or it's a great story. And if it's a story that the writers want to tell about Coach of the Year and they want to make it that way, Todd McClellan is that guy. Team didn't make the playoffs last year. They had no expectations. They have an aging captain who's played over 1,300 games in the NHL. Youngsters, Doughty, everybody says he's past his prime. And you still get that team to the postseason? To me, that's Coach of the Year. If that's the way you're going. That's not the way I would, if I had a vote, it's always the team that had the best record. It's not, well, I'm picking through, and it shouldn't be, oh, well, this team has a shitty, like, if you have a crap roster and you become if you become first in the league, then you're awarded for it. But guess what? Lindy Ruff had a very crappy roster in New Jersey. They didn't make the playoffs. But they played hard. Does that mean he should win Coach of the Year? No. I love New Jersey. I love watching them play, but their team's no good. But that's just how I look at it. But that's interesting to me down the stretch here. In the West, how these teams approach it, how these teams play. Not many games left. Every game is important. And I'm happy we see a race, something to really trigger something for me last night to say, you know what? The Pacific Division is now interesting at the bottom. Who's going to play the Oilers in the first round? And what kind of problem could that create for the Edmonton Oilers? Rangers, Hurricanes tonight. Normally, I'm a guy that likes to watch the crappy game. You know, I find myself watching the Devils, or I'll watch the Red Wings. And again, it's a weird phobia of mine, but I just find myself watching bad teams. But tonight, I looked at the schedule. I look at it, try to pick off games every week that I'm like, yeah, I want to watch that one. I want to go through, kind of dissect this team. And it just came to me. I see Hurricanes, Rangers. And normally that screams, that's too high tech. People who actually care about that game. But then I'm like, well, no, nobody will, because it's Toronto's playing tonight against Buffalo. Nobody will watch this game. So I got to watch it. But you have the Carolina Hurricanes, who currently sit first in the Metropolitan Division with 102 points. And the New York Rangers sit second in the Metropolitan Division with 100 points this late in the season. This race is still on for home ice, for the ability to not get the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round. Potentially they will if the Caps can catch them down the stretch. But you get home ice in the first and second round. You're guaranteed that. So this is a big game because I think both teams are very good. I mentioned the Rangers. I love their deadline moves. You get guys some depth. Andrew Kopp has fit in like a glove in New York. Shesterkin has found his game again. He looks dialed in. Adam Fox continues to grow. Lindgren, Keandre Miller. I love the Rangers. I think the Rangers could win the Stanley Cup this year. I get they're young, but I truly think they could. But Carolina is also a team that there's not much you don't like about the Carolina Hurricanes. They have pace if you want it. They have girth if you want it. They have good goaltending. They'll play any kind of way with you, and they have a coach that Rob Brendamore is a lot like Nick Nurse, where I think of the Raptors, where I think he expects a lot out of his players. He expects them to play a certain way. He expects a certain level of intensity. But he'll also look at the opponent and say, well, if this team does this, really well, we don't do this that well. He'll make a change. He'll make an adjustment. He's that kind of coach. So I think this is the game of the night. I think St. Louis, Boston also intrigues me. These two teams play twice in the next couple of days. And, they only play twice a season, so late in the season for these two teams to meet up. But they've both played 73 games. So they each have 9 games remaining. And obviously, New York is trailing. So if they win tonight, they will jump into first in the Metro. They'll be in the catbird seat down the stretch. This would be a big one. If you can get a regulation win for Carolina, you have a 4-point buffer. You're in good shape. You feel good. You feel good about your chances to win. The game's at Madison Square Garden tonight. I think the Garden will be bumping. We're getting closer to playoff time. The Rangers are a viable threat, and that's better for the National Hockey League when the Rangers are. When the Rangers are a team that could really win. Normally, they're a team that would make the playoffs. Maybe something happens. They haven't been a true Stanley Cup threat since mid-2010s, 2015, 2014, where they were right there. But you look at the Rangers, they've had a fantastic season. Shesterkin speaks for himself. Adam Fox is a stud. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Chris Kreider has 49 goals. He's going to have 50 goals this season. I think he's the true leader of that team. He's the heart and soul. He's been there forever. But crazy for him. Panarin, obviously, is a fantastic player. I mentioned K'Andre Miller, Ryan Lindgren. Love them both. Lafreniere has found his game a bit. He's only got 25 points, but he's playing better lately. So, but I like their team a lot. And having home ice, having through 2 rounds, or if it ended today, they would play, say the Rangers pass the Hurricanes. They would get Boston in the first round. It's not an easy matchup, but I think I'd prefer to play Boston over playing Pittsburgh. And the Rangers have had Pittsburgh's number over the last couple weeks, but it's a division matchup. I think those games are going to get tight. Pittsburgh's got a lot of playoff experience, as do the Bruins, but I do think Pittsburgh's a little better of a team right now. I think I'd prefer to play the Bruins than play. Now, it could be Tampa, because Tampa and Boston are only separated by 1 point. Boston's got 95, Tampa with 96, both teams with 10 games to play. Florida, Toronto, Tampa, and Boston all have 10 games to play in the Atlantic Division. And oddly enough, oddly enough, they all played tonight, but that is not true. Tampa is in Dallas. Toronto is playing the Buffalo Sabres. Boston is in St. Louis. Or maybe they do. They do. My bad. They do all play tonight. So, and Florida is playing the Ducks. So all those Atlantic Division teams play tonight, which is interesting to track. But Boston, I think now it's Toronto's playing fantastic. They seem to have, I think they'll have home ice. So now it's Tampa and Boston, 10 games left to see who will be third in the Atlantic, who will play Toronto in the first round, who will be a wild card team and play either the Rangers or the Hurricanes. But I'm looking, that game interests me tonight. Another game that I'll probably watch a bit of, and I watch this team a lot. I'm guilty. I like watching this team, but Minnesota hosts Edmonton. I mentioned Edmonton a minute ago, but Minnesota came from 3 down on Sunday to beat the Los Angeles Kings. But Cam Talbot has won 8 of his last 10 starts. He's got a 194 goals against in that stretch. He's playing really well. And I don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to start? I'm kind of starting to lean towards him starting in the postseason. Maybe it won't be him because they traded for Fleury. But just because you traded for a guy doesn't mean he should just get to start. I think Cam Talbot is very much still in the mix. He should still get a look. And if he's the hot hand going into the playoffs, I think it tells you a lot. But Talbot starts tonight. Minnesota plays again on Thursday. And then they play St. Louis in primetime Saturday afternoon. So that I think that'll tell me a lot as who gets the start in that game. It could be for who gets home ice. Talbot, I assume Fleury will go Thursday because they've been playing one on, one off. But do they go to Fleury in that big game? Because I think it will be a big game. That will be a big game. Who do they turn to start? If they keep the rotation throughout the rest of the season, they got 11 games left. If it goes Talbot starts 6, Fleury starts 5, because that's just the way it works. I think they'll start Fleury game one because it was clearly just a rotation and they wanted to have their goalies ready, rested. You get the point. If Talbot goes tonight, then you see Fleury go Thursday, and then he goes Saturday. I think that's an audition start to see if Fleury, how he's going to handle playing against that team, the matchup, how he looks. That's a game where it's a measuring stick. Edmonton's a tough team as well tonight for Talbot. He used to play for the Oilers. But what is interesting down the stretch there is who in these big spotlight type games, if you can define any of that as we get to 10 games left in the season, who gets those big game starts? And to me, Minnesota versus St. Louis on Saturday is one of those games where is it Talbot because that's a rotation, or do you go to Fleury to see if he can get a big win over a big team in that situation? So there's a lot of big games tonight. Like I said, you got Minnesota and Edmonton. You got Boston, St. Louis, Hurricanes, Rangers, Lightning, Stars. That's a big game for Tampa because they're trying to get second in the Atlantic, but also Dallas because they're fighting for the playoff lives. So lots of intrigue there. And also, normally the Buffalo Sabres aren't that compelling, although they've beaten the Toronto Maple Leafs the last two times they've played. Owen Power, the former number one overall pick, will make his NHL debut tonight in Toronto. He's a Toronto kid. He's a Toronto native. So he gets to play in front of lots of family and friends. He could have made his first appearance on Sunday in Tampa, but they decided to wait until he returned home. Good, because Buffalo lost Sunday 5-0. But also he gets his friends and family. I think this is a good move for the Sabres, a good PR move. Gets time for him to settle in, a few practices, and alert his family to get to the arena in time for tonight's game. So Owen Power, who I saw play at the World Juniors, who I think is going to be a superstar in the National Hockey League, will make his first NHL appearance tonight. And for him, this season is the first year of his entry-level deal. He's going to only play a max of 10 games, but that's just the way the contracts work, the way it's set up coming from college. This year will count as his first year of his entry-level deal, whether he plays 9+ games or not. So that means going into next season, he's going to have less than 10 games of NHL experience. And he will have 1 year of his entry level burned, meaning he will only have to play 2 years before his rookie deal is done and he is eligible for a contract extension. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal, although Buffalo is a cheap organization, but I also think it's a great option. It's a great clause for Owen Power because if he gets to the end of his rookie deal, it's still bad scenario in Buffalo. He has the ability to say, I'm not going to play here. I want to get traded. And it's not a long time where your career could potentially be screwed. But also it's great for the player because you get money very quickly into your career. The guy will be 22 years old and be exiting his rookie contract and signing a big ticket in all likelihood. Likely more than what Rasmus Dahlin got coming out of his entry level. And he still makes, I think, $6 million. But I think the way I look at Power compared to Dahlin, I think he'll be making more. But also tonight, Matty Beniers, who went second overall in the draft last year, will make his NHL debut for the Seattle Kraken against the Calgary Flames. He obviously was a teammate with Power on the Olympics, on Michigan. Sorry, not at the Olympics. He's an American, but he was with Michigan. They lost in the semifinal to the University of Denver this past weekend in the Frozen Four. He makes his NHL debut, and Kent Johnson will make his NHL debut tonight as well for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So 3 college kids, all taken in the top 5 of last year's NHL entry draft, will make their NHL debuts tonight. And it's so weird to see 3 guys making their debut with such high profile in April or just in the last 10 games of the season. But I think this is going to be more and more common. I think the college route to get to the NHL, I said this forever, I think it's going to surpass the Canadian Hockey League. I think it's a better option because you get to play against higher end talent. You get to mature as a person, and we'll see. But I think the CHL route of getting to the NHL is a dying breed. We'll see if I'm right about that. That's a wait to see. But I think the college route, the NCAA route, as much as I hate the NCAA and that institution, will be the winning way to get the National Hockey League. The best way, you're best suited to get there by going the college route and not going the CHL normal route, where that just was the way you went. You went to the Canadian Hockey League, you played in the O, you played in the W, you played in the Q. Now I think more and more people exercise their option to go to school, get an education, and also there's some luxuries in there where you go to college, you don't like the team that you're drafted to, you don't think it's the best situation, you don't got to stay with that team. You can force your way out, you become a unrestricted free agent, and you go where you want to go. Adam Fox did it twice, it worked out. Guys have done it. Jimmy VC did it. There's certain guys it doesn't look as well because your career didn't go that great. But when you're a good player, it works out. Worked out for Johnny Gaudreau. It looks good on you. You have a good career, and you got to pick your landing spot. You are the author of your own fate. So that's something I see happening in not too distant future. I see the NCAA surpassing the Canadian Hockey League as the best route to the NHL. But lots of good hockey action tonight, and we'll get more into that as the week goes on. We'll recap it tomorrow here on To The Point. Major League Baseball. Always interesting. We'll talk Blue Jays here in a minute. But this was quite a story, right? Again, I'm reading this afternoon. Normally, the Cincinnati Reds is not a team that makes a lot of headlines. You know Cincinnati Reds because they have Joey Votto. He's a Canadian, good guy, first baseman, maybe a Hall of Famer, but they're not known for much more than that. Great American Ballpark, the birthplace of baseball. But they're known for Joey Votto and basically, yeah, that's about it. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm reading, I'm like, oh, Cincinnati Reds. That's got to be something. So their president has been interviewed lately, and fans have been booing at the ballpark. Fans on social media are mad because the team has cut payroll in a massive way, and the fans are frustrated that the team is not trying to win. They've talked about boycotting games and even asking for a new ownership in Cincinnati. So normally you see presidents, you see ownerships just say, we're going to do our best to win for you guys. It might be bullshit, but you sell a story. The Pagulas have done this in Buffalo. You go up on the table, you answer questions, you go to the media, and you say and do the right things. At least you don't really say the right things because you're just bullshitting, but you go through the whole charade, and Bob's your uncle. You're back in the same position a year later, and the fans just seem to forget. But that's a fan for you. But the Reds president, Phil Castellini, had a different approach to this. He was asked, what's your response to fans not coming to the ballpark, saying that they're going to boycott games? He says, where are you going to go? What do you expect? We're not going anywhere. So I think fans just need to suck it up and embrace this, because nobody wants to win more than me. And by the way, ownership isn't going anywhere either. So buy in or get out. That's a direct quote, by the way. That's not me just interpreting his thought. That's a direct quote. Got it written down here. So first big tagline there. Where are you going to go? That is an interesting question. Well, I'm not a fan. I'm a sports fan, but I'm not a fan of one particular team. So he's not speaking to me. Creighton, yes, bold move, Cotton, exactly. But where are you going to go? Well, if you're a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, could you not go to St. Louis? Could you not go to Chicago? Could you not go to another team? Is that a turncoat? Is that a Stalin type move? Betraying the home front? Sure. It's not very courageous. It's weak. I get that. But if you have a president that's challenging you, saying, where are you going to go? I know I got you here. We're going to stink, but you're not leaving because I'm that confident. Well, maybe this is just my personality type. And again, my personality type is not for everybody. Not everybody should have my personality type because this world will be a wacky bunch. But I'm a cynic. I like to go against what people tell me to do. For instance, get a haircut. No. You should shave. No. It's just if you don't ask me to do something, I'm more likely to do it. But where are you going to go? Well, maybe they'll leave your fan base. Maybe they won't go to the ballpark. Because I could just tell you something, Phil Castellini. Where are you going to go? Well, maybe if they don't even leave teams, they will go from the seats to the couch. And you'll have nobody at your games. So they're still Cincinnati Reds fans. They're still screaming at their television, but in the comforts of their own home. In their home where they have access to a bathroom, where they could have a cold pint in their fridge, or they don't have to wait for concessions. So while they're at home, sure, your television ratings might be greater than they ever have been, but your money when it comes to ticket revenue will go down because you are poking the bear. The most important people to any business, any sports league, any business, anybody, me, are my customers, are my listeners. I want to hear from you guys because that's who my radius is. I'm talking to you. In this case, Phil Castellini is saying to our audience, the most important aspect of communication. I learned this early on in a class. A brilliant professor told me this about communication. Know your audience. Phil Castellini is getting a tongue lashing from his PR department right now. They're having a crash communications saying, oh my God, this is like NB Power not telling you that the power is going out for a week, and then they have to. Oh my God, we got to get it out. We got to tell them it's gonna be quicker than we thought. Oh my God, we didn't tell them, and it's mass panic because people are losing it. Well, people don't have to go to the ballpark. It costs a lot of money to go to sporting events. People say, you know what, I'm not going to go to Florida. I'm going to buy season tickets to the Cincinnati Reds this year. Screw the trip. We're buying season tickets because it's just what you do, right? Well, what if Joe and Rita and their children have season tickets, but Joe's pissed off because Phil Castellini says, where are you going to go? You're going to challenge me? I've been coming to the ballpark watching your shitty product for too long, buddy. I'm staying home. And then more people follow and more people. And before you know it, you're the Baltimore Orioles and nobody's at the park. And thank fuck for revenue sharing because otherwise you'd be selling the team. Baseball teams aren't that lucrative right now because people aren't going. The Nationals are trying to sell. The Washington Nationals. Washington. The nation's capital, the ownership is selling the team. Denver Broncos selling the team. When your product sucks, which Cincinnati's has for quite a long time, you need loyal fan base. You need to coddle like a little baby. Rock the baby. Make them have 1 ounce of trust in you. Make them happy. At least give them something to keep them focused on you. Phil Castellini did the complete opposite. He said, fuck you to his fans. You're not going to leave because I know you're not. Because we're the Cincinnati Reds. You guys are diehard fans, and we just got you. Really? I don't think this is going to go well. This is something we're going to track, and I hope there's stories written about it, about attendance the rest of the year. I'm all for making big statements, being open, being transparent with the media. But there's something about being transparent with the media. There's a difference between being honest and be like, we felt like we had to move out contracts like Jesse Winker, like Eugenio Suarez, like Sonny Gray, like Amir Garrett, like letting Nick Castellanos walk in free agency, because we didn't feel they could get us to a World Series, make the playoffs, be competitive. That might sting for some, but some fans might sit there and be like, at least he's being honest with me. He didn't think we could win with this group. He's going to try to get some players that can. So you're pissed, but you accept it because it's like, well, yeah, he's probably right. These guys aren't winning anything. We're not beating the Cardinals in our own division. Okay, we'll finish above the Pirates with these guys, but that's it. So am I upset that we're going to stink for a number? Yeah, but at least he's trying to get better. Now he's saying, we stink, you stink, you're still going to come to the ballpark because I said so. That's being too honest. That's being arrogant to a fault. You have to know your audience. He didn't. Some fan bases are just going to show up regardless. We see in Toronto when they stunk, yeah, they might have thrown jerseys on the ice. They might have been upset with players, but they still showed up because that's just what you do in these markets. You just go. That's how it works. But in other places, that's just not the culture. If somebody comes after you and you're summertime, July, you're like, why am I going to the ballpark? Let's go to the beach. Let's go do something else. Baseball used to be America's favorite pastime. It is not anymore. It's football. Football is a 12-month-a-year sport. There's not games 12 months a year, but it's always talked about. Baseball is not always on the top of mind, but for this president, you didn't think about your audience. You weren't smart. I'm interested to see what happens with you. But interesting strategy. To quote Pepper Brooks, it's going to be very hard for him to see cotton. I don't know. But interesting development, that's for sure. Blue Jays beat the Yankees last night, 3-0. George Springer goes 3 for 5, 3 runs batted in. He's batting .400 on the season. He's playing fantastic. Saw a great double play from in the 7th inning by Bo Bichette, really one of the best. And really great play, great start to the season for the Blue Jays. What was the biggest development was Alec Manoah. He goes 6 innings last night, 86 pitches, 4 walks, which has always been a problem for him, but he got out of it behind good defense and some good pitching on him, and he has 7 strikeouts. So best start of the season for any starting pitcher for the Blue Jays. And, I think Springer is so important to their team. Obviously, he gets all 3 RBIs last night. But more than that, his presence defensively in center field, he creates an aura. He makes them more comfortable. He top of the lineup, he's a threat to start the game. It's just different to have him there than Espinal or Biggio. I just think it's so important for George Springer to be there, to be in the lineup, and to really have an impact on this team. So good to see him back in his usual spot and having an impact. Aaron Judge, I want to talk about this. I talked about this a little bit, but Aaron Judge, I did some more research, and it's really quite baffling. Before Friday, first pitch, he set his own deadline that he would not negotiate a new contract with the Yankees in season. And the Yankees offered 30-year-old Aaron Judge a 7-year contract worth $216 million, which is $30.5 million a season. A lot of money for a 30-year-old who likely will only get worse over time, and you're a long-term commitment, a very good player, but he's injury prone. He has his warts, but they offered him it. He says no. But Aaron Judge, if he signed this contract, would have became the second highest paid outfielder in baseball. But Aaron Judge would be making more money than Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts, who's won an MVP, who's a World Series champion, who's a better player than Aaron Judge. He'd be $5.5 million behind Mike Trout in overall salary, but Aaron Judge is not Mike Trout. But oddly enough, I'm thinking about this. Aaron Judge must not love playing in New York. It must not be his ideal scenario. But if it's all about money, which I'm sure it is, Aaron Judge might get more money in the open market. But he'll be destined for a career playing for bad teams. He'll get that deal, but from the Kansas City Royals or the Cleveland Guardians or a team that's just perpetually bad. Maybe the Cincinnati Reds, who we just talked about, will throw money at Aaron Judge just to keep him happy. But to me, it was it's just lucky that the New York Yankees, that Aaron Judge did not accept that deal from the New York Yankees. I think this is better for the Yankees in the long run. Aaron Judge is a very good player right now. But when they're both 100% healthy, I believe that Giancarlo Stanton is better. Although he's not as good in the field, but to me, he's a better batter. But Aaron Judge at that salary is an albatross. It's something that's very hard to overcome. And I would rather have a player that is coming up in the organization. You get a free agent, whomever. But I would not be paying Aaron Judge that much money. That's just me. But I think the Yankees lucked out. I think the Yankees are going to be going through an interesting transition. Because I mentioned, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I said that before the season started. Season's very young. They've had a pretty decent start. They're 2-2. But again, I don't love their team. I don't love their starting pitching. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. If they don't, like I said, even if they make it, I think the Blue Jays are better than them. You look around, there's some teams that I just think are better than the New York Yankees. So then you have Stanton. Judge is a free agent. You still have Garrett Cole's contract that's just sitting on your lap. I think Chapman's a free agent. After he might have 1 year left, or it could be a free agent. So he could be free. So you could be looking around saying, wow, we're going through a real transition. We don't have the team that we had before. We have a lot of players that are going to be gone. But it's interesting. I'm just looking back on this Nick Castellini for the Reds. He got asked about it again today, doubled down. Didn't back up, didn't even apologize. Yeah. You know what? Interesting. Interesting move from him. But yeah, I don't buy it. That's for sure. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But I don't, not a smart move. Not a smart move whatsoever. So, lots happening in the world of sports tonight. You got, obviously, I mentioned some great NHL games. You got the play-in games in the NBA. Baseball already happening today. You have the Red Sox getting a big win over the Tigers, couple runs in the 8th inning. They needed that win. They've been playing some poor baseball to start the season. They got a series in Detroit this week playing some afternoon games. You got Mariners and White Sox right now. They're tied at 1 in the 4th. Guardians are 3 up on the Reds. Mets, Phillies. I watched a lot of that game last night. Mets leading the whole way through, but then their bullpen blows up and they end up losing the game. So the Phillies storm back and win that one. Blue Jays, Yankees, game 2. Dodgers are at the Twins. You got Padres, Giants. Padres won game 1 of that series. So they're 4-1, so they're off to a good start of the season. Padres got to hope to play 500. If they could play a little bit better than that baseball before Tatis is back, that's their ideal scenario because they're in a very tough division. But again, I think the Giants are going to take a step back this season. Just they're very good, but they're had such a hot season last year. I don't think it would continue. I think the Padres will be that team to look out for. But like I said, lots happening in the world of sports tonight. Seamus will be back tomorrow. We'll get into a lot of different things. We'll talk about the NBA plan. We'll talk about some baseball, hockey. You know it, how it goes here. But hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Enjoy sports. Enjoy the sports action tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow. This has been To The Point.